All right, guys, today is Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. Today marks 38 days I have left to finish 55 for an upcoming event in October. So I want to give just a quick update. I do have a couple little video clips I'll throw in after I talk about this, but I am finally getting a little bit of headway, although I did have to take one step backwards, but I kind of knew I was going to have to in the beginning anyway. But let's get to it. So yesterday I fired the car back up after modding the carburetor, blasting the spark plugs, changing the pulleys, and putting a bypass wire in the alternator. And the blasting of the spark plugs worked awesome. The car seemed to want to idle pretty good. Other than this distributor is just not going to work out. So I've got a new one on order and it's supposed to be here Friday. I'll get to more on that in here in just a second. So if you guys have been following along, I had an issue with the alternator not wanting to keep up with that electric fan. And I have run this exact fan and that SI 10 or 12 alternator before on a 56 Chevy, and I didn't have the trouble I'm having this time. However, I had forgot I had installed underdrive pulleys on this engine because I bought those pulleys like 8, 9, 10 years ago. So I put stock GM pulleys on it, but I also put a bypass wire in, and this is like the first time I've never not done that. And I don't know why I didn't do it, but I've done it always before. But anyway, I put the bypass wire in from the Easy Wire kit that goes from the hot post on the alternator to the hot post on the starter. And I did the pulleys at the same time, and I fired the car up, and I had just a little over 14 volts on the autometer gauge on the A-pillar. When that fan kicked on, I walked back around, looked at the gauge, and it was still over 14 volts. And I do have a little clip of that. So that fixed it. Whether it was the pulleys or the bypass wire or the combination of both, it's now fixed and working like it should. So the issue I have now is this car starts and runs and it's fine, but it has intermittent stumbling issues. This distributor I made from a bunch of junk. That is an MSD Street Fire HEI housing with a stock GM shaft and gear on it. The shaft and gear that was on this was damaged, so I replaced it with just stock GM stuff. It has mixed match components in it. The module, the coil are all mixed matched. No telling how many times they've been heat cycled, no telling how weak they are. But anyway, the car it'll be idling fine, and then it'll start stumbling, and then it'll clear up. It's just intermittent. I also can't get the timing where I want it. It's got 22 initial with 36 total. Don't know what's up with that. I've never had one that had that much initial with the vacuum advance unplugged during the timing process. So I just ended up holding the throttle up on it a little bit and then setting it at 36 degrees and then locking the distributor down. So I've got my total timing 36, but my initial's 22, which doesn't seem to be a problem. It starts just fine. It's not hard to crank and it's not kicking back on the starter or nothing. But it's just, you know, that distributor is made up from a bunch of junk. So I've got a new Excel complete HEI unit coming, and hopefully it'll be here Friday and I'll get that swapped out. Then after I get the distributor in and it retimed, then I'm going to work on dialing in that carburetor with a vacuum gauge and get it properly tuned. What else? No more heating issues. Now that the fan kicks on and the alternator is keeping up with it and keeping it at 14 volts, the fan is running a lot harder and louder, so now it's cooling better. But also that water pump pulley, the stock GM one, is a little bit smaller than that underdrive unit, the March one. So basically fixed two issues I had, and that's really nice to make a little headway. I kind of figured I was going to have to do the distributor thing eventually because of how that was put together, but I'll take it now. But blasting the spark plugs with baking soda actually worked. That's pretty cool. What else? The center caps, if you guys watched my test drive video, the center caps were clicking because they were loose. I ended up pulling the front wheels off, and I took the center cap, the flange, and I just took a pair of pliers and just put some little kinks all the way around and put them back in, torqued the wheel down, and now it's fine. So no more, I can't spin them now, and they don't move up and down. So the front wheels are done. Now I have to do the rears. And you 55 Chevy owners know the pain that I'm about to go through. These cars have small fender well openings in the rear, and anytime you lower one or go with bigger tires and wheels, they are always a little bit of a struggle to get off. which I can get it off. It's just a process, you know what I mean? But I've still got to do the rears on the center caps, and then that part will be fixed. The other issue I have is my speedometer cable. The speedometer on the test drive was not moving. The needle never moved. So I removed the speedometer cable. I had another one here. I put it in, and now the speedometer works. The other thing is the fuel gauge. I need to get that. I need to diagnose that. All I did the other day when I tested, I just took I've got a long wire with alligator clips on both ends, and I clipped it to the chrome bumper, and I clipped it to the housing of the sending unit just to see if I had a ground issue. Because everything is painted and the underneath of the car is Raptor lined, even this in here is Raptor lined. So I was thinking, well, maybe I'm not getting a good ground, but it didn't change anything. So I've got that to do. Another little issue I have is the factory temperature gauge in the dash, which I'll never really look at it. I just didn't want a dead gauge in the dash by not having it hooked up. These 55 and 6 clusters, they have a temperature gauge. Now in 55, you got a mechanical capillary tube. In 56, it's an electric, and this is a 56. So this is the one I'll be watching. I won't even really care about this. I just didn't want a dead gauge, but I bought a new sending unit, and I kind of feel it is not the correct ohm rating. So I don't think it's reading correctly, because that thing's getting pretty close to full hot when the engine's sitting at 180 degrees. So I need to try to look into finding a good one for that. But I have an original one from a 56 that I thought I might try, but that's like last on the list. This will be something I do later, as long as, you know, I don't have a dead gauge in the dash, and I really don't care right now, but that's just another thing that I need to mess with later. Another problem I have is I noticed a little red transmission fluid drip on the bottom of one of my bolts on my transmission pan. I got under there with a light, looked it over real good yesterday, and it looks like the pan gasket is leaking, and that is one of the rubber pan gaskets that came with that aftermarket trans pan, so it is leaking. Well, I got the center cap off the wheel here. It's got 3 little raised spots on it. I guess it's supposed to take up slack, but they're not doing their job. All right, so I put some basically little tweaks in it there. So I'm gonna see if this works. Hopefully it does. All right, that fixed that. It's kind of nice. I can live with that. 3 more to go. But the electric fan is on, and I'm right at 14 volts on the gauge with the fan on, so probably the bypass wire and the pulley fixed it.